Good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Courtney Cup, hitting Cudahy, man.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Cudahy, to all my friends and relatives in four directions, you are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. Hey, we discuss local, national, Native news and events, and as you know, Chujunk, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
Yes, you are right, Dega. And this portion of the show is supported by Native American Community Development Institute, or NACD, in Minneapolis.
Hey, we got a kick-butt show going on tonight, but before we get our guests on, why am I so happy, Haley?
Well, I think it might have to do with the orange one.
Yeah, we don't like saying his name here on Native Roots Radio, but 34 counts, 2 impeachments, and on and on and on. And we were really excited that he got his just due. 34 counts, 34 out of 34.
Yeah, and he's still saying it's rigged.
Yeah. Well, he'll say it's rigged forever. So we're excited because, the longer the jury would stay in, the more chance it would be a hung jury. Or even an acquittal, and we were happy that they were only in for 8 hours, and I was excited. Wendy and I were on the boardwalk, really excited to get back and watch this. So a good day to be very happy.
Yeah, exactly. And we have, some really good lineup of guests here that I'm excited to get to. I just want to shout out Robert Lilligren will not be with us today of NACD, but we do have a couple important things to get out. We want to say Frank Buffalo Hyde's gallery exhibit. Artist Talk is tomorrow night, Friday, May 31st from 5 to 7. And then next Thursday, is the first day of the Four Sisters Farmers Market. So we hope to see everyone out there at 1414 East Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis.
Hey, I will be out there, and it's a place to be seen and see people. So that'll be exciting. And I know our store, Native Roots Arts, will be out there, and I believe Haley will be, I don't want to use the word manning, but you'll be manning the show.
Womaning the vendor store. Yeah. Yep. One time out of the month. So I believe we won't be there the first week, but maybe the second.
Well, let's get our guests on here because we have a lot to talk about, and we have not talked about Line 5 for a while here. So I'm really excited to get Paul and Doug on here, and Paul's been on the show, Paul DeMain, and let's get him on. Good to see you, Paul. Good to see you, Doug. And Paul, I'll just introduce you here. You're Community United by Water. That's a great organization, and you are the head of that, I believe. And Doug, you're a water advocate and a Line 5 person, and we're really excited to have you on and update our listening audience all over Turtle Island. As you know, we're on over 25 stations, Paul, and we got about 200,000 listeners on Turtle Island. So it's really important for us to amplify what's going on with Line 5. And again, welcome back.
Well, good afternoon to Indian country over the entire globe. And Robert and Haley, glad to be back. And there's plenty to talk about. Just wanted to say that there is no director or head of Communities United by Water. It's one of the unique things is that it's a very large coalition of probably over 150 people who participate in one way or fashion as either representatives of other organizations, the Sierra Club, 350.org, all kinds of private-owned businesses in the Chequamegon Bay area. So it's quite a coalition of people who come together on a monthly basis and talk about issues of the environment and projects that would impact the watershed of the Chequamegon Bay Ashland area of northern Wisconsin. And of course, this is just the current issue. If anyone's looked at the activities of the Chequamegon Bay area, they've stopped mines, they've stopped offshore oil drilling, they've stopped an incinerator. They've done some tremendous things because it is a water-based economy that understands clean water and understands that a spill on the Great Lake Superior Gitchigumi would halt that commerce for Madeline Island and for Bayfield and Washburn and many other areas. The impacts to the environment would be dramatic and drastic, probably long-standing, no matter what size of the leak. So welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And Doug, I want to welcome you too. First time being on. Really excited to hear your insight of what's happening with this Line 5. And as we know, here in Minnesota, we've had Line 3 and a lot of upset things that happened up there, in the headwaters, and we've been fighting this for a long time, but it's great to have you two on. Doug, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate that. And Line 5 is just another Line 3 with, 2 more digits. So it's the same story over and over again.
Well, we're going to get deep in here and remind our listening audience, because there's so much going on and a lot of going on with their life, but what's happening with Line 5 and Enbridge, and how we can support your work and get people the knowledge out there that they need to be able to talk about what's happening up in the deep north. So Haley, do I have another? I'm sorry, I thought I saw you put up a sign, but we have another 4 minutes, it looks like, right?
Yeah. My sign said just to unmute.
Oh, hey, well, we have more. I should pay attention more. Well, Paul, let's get into the history here and talk about Line 5 right now, and we got another 4 minutes on here. Thank you.
Well, the Line 5 is part of the extension of the spider web of pipelines that run throughout North America, coming in from Canada around International Falls. 4 lines run through Wisconsin and go south. 1 line runs across the northern tier along Lake Superior in Wisconsin and the UP down into Detroit, and then over across to Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, where the majority of the oil products that run in that line are delivered to, even though there's some offshoots there in Escanaba for natural gas, which I was just reading an article about how one of the owners up there in UP has already found an alternative source if Line 5 would be shut down for his customers. And so some of the fears that Enbridge try to put into individuals and this massive spending spree. I mean, in 2021, they reported alone that they spent something like $61 million in Wisconsin for PR, media, newspaper ads, Super Bowl ads. Every single newspaper went from a quarter page to a half page to a full page. And I hope people remember water protectors when they realize the economic impact the water protectors have put on to pressure Enbridge and that foreign-owned company to share some of its revenues, because Line 5 was put in between 1953 and 1955. It's something like 645 miles long, a 41-mile reroute around the Bad River. It doesn't do anything for the other 620 some miles that is corroding and has been in the ground for 70 years, 15 to 20 years past its life. There's the Mackinac Strait issue that's bound up in the court system as well, where Michigan issued a shutdown order that's been defied by this foreign corporation, continue to flow their oil through the line, and that line and Mackinac Straits has been struck by anchors. It's adrift without proper support beams in place that have been washed out in the last 70 years. So there's a lot to be talked about in regards to what's going on. But we got a hearing coming up, and I'll get back to that a little bit later on June 4th, where the Army Corps is going to be taking testimony nationally in Wisconsin.
Well, thanks. And Paul, you're an old radio TV guy, so you saw that sign and we wrapped it up real well. Right on. All right. Hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio, and we'll be back. We're talking about Line 5 here, and we'll be back after this short break.
If the statistics say that 1 in 3 Native women and 1 in 6 Native men have experienced sexual assault in their lifetime, it means our whole community is affected by sexual violence. 1 is too many. Don't stand by, stand up. Don't engage in acts of sexual violence, and shut down the dirty jokes, the gossip, the victim blaming and shaming. As a community, we can change the way we respond. Contact the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to attend a workshop to learn more.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis AIR. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950. As we gear up for American Indian Celebration Month in May, it's crucial to prioritize our health, especially with celebrations on the horizon. If you start feeling off, like a fever, a tickle in the throat, or heavy fatigue, don't ignore it. Take an at-home COVID-19 test right away. And remember, if you're not feeling well, it's okay to stay home. Your health comes first. A quick note on COVID testing. The Minnesota Department of Health's free COVID-19 at-home testing program has ended. But don't worry, if you're uninsured, you can still find no-cost tests using the CDC's COVID-19 testing locator. If you have health insurance, you might be eligible for free tests or reimbursement for testing expenses. Just ask your local pharmacy or health insurance provider for more information. Stay informed, stay protected. Let's prioritize our health this American Indian Celebration Month in May and ensure our communities and elders remain safe and healthy. This message is brought to you in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Health. Visit health.state.mn.us.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Strong Hearts Native Helpline, culturally appropriate support and advocacy 24/7. Learn more at strongheartshelpline.org.
Well, we are talking Line 5 right now, and we had a really good intro from our friend Paul DeMain here. Doug, what can you add to what's happening with Line 5? And one of the things I do want to bring up and that we talk about, especially with Enbridge, is that they're a foreign oil company pumping money into here. Like Paul was saying earlier, we'd go to the hockey tournament, the high school hockey tournament, the high school basketball tournament, and guess who the advertisers were? Enbridge. So it just sickens me in a lot of different ways. But Doug, introduce yourself and tell us what your perspective is of what's happening here in Line 5.
Well, my perspective comes from getting involved with Line 3 and seeing the damage that was done there and how it affects the communities that the pipeline goes through. You know, short term, there's good money for some people to work, but long term, there's nothing except damage. And my involvement with Line 5 after, moving from Line 3 has been through an organization or a group of people that are affiliated across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Canada. And our goal in that environment or that organization is to continue to put pressure on the Canadian government to stop using a 1977 treaty to keep oil flowing. The state of Michigan and the Bad River Reservation have both issued stop orders against Line 5. And both of those orders were overturned when the Canadian government imposed or invoked a 1977 treaty to keep the oil flowing. And some of that is now in court, and it's being litigated. But our goal in terms of our cross-border organizing group is to continue to apply pressure to the Canadian government, both from our perspective here in the United States, as well as our Canadian partners. And those Canadian partners have done some pretty interesting things. In October 19th of 2022, there were a couple of water protectors in Canada that climbed the scaffolding in Montreal and shut down the international terminal that exports Line 9 fuel internationally. And Line 9 is just an extension of Line 5 from Sarnia, Michigan, or Sarnia, Ontario to Montreal. So we are working pretty hard to execute actions and petitions to bring Line 5 at least to stop its expansion and hopefully to put a stop to it.
Oh, they talk about jobs, and we know the how false the jobs are. They're not high-paying jobs; they're contract jobs. Talk a little bit about of all these false promises that Enbridge has had over the years with jobs.
Well, there's a lot of jobs involved with any kind of construction and infrastructure work in the country, and there's a lot of money in infrastructure for union workers nowadays, and there's a great need for pipelines. But the pipelines that I think we need are clean water in Flint, Michigan, clean water in some of the northern Minnesota towns that are running foul with their drinking water. There's plenty of work. And there's plenty of jobs that come and go. My experience of watching what happened in Minnesota is that probably 60% of the workforce, and I forgot what it was, if it's 1,000, about 60% of the workforce or more were people who were in the pipeline industries, because you saw Texas and Pennsylvania and Oklahoma license plates all over the place working there in northern Minnesota. So there's no doubt that there's stimulus, but it comes and goes. I mean, the Line 3 had its impact. It came and went. And frankly, again, let's thank water protectors for extending it out. They thought they'd be up there for 6 months, and because of the actions by water protectors, it took 2 months. A lot of the union employees on that pipeline had extended vacation time, accumulated overtime, time and a half bonus. Their contracts were longer than they thought they were going to be. They ought to go out and thank a water protector for doing that for us, as we're doing the job of helping pump their jobs up a little bit. But we really want to focus not on we might have some advocates within our organization that want to shut down fossil fuels tomorrow, because that's the argument. Someone says, well, it's, what happens if they shut the oil down tomorrow? The whole world is going to go to hell, kind of a thing. Well, I'm certainly not focused on shutting all the fossil fuel industry down tomorrow. And I'm focused on one deteriorating line that's in a dangerous place, that has alternatives, that's not going to cost people in Sarnia more than a penny more per gallon of pumped gas there. And the majority of the products that are produced by this dirty, very, very expensive tar sands oil products out of the foreign country, that it's coming into the United States and being transported. We take on the majority of the risk. We've already had something like 22 spills on Line 5, the most famous being the Kalamazoo that spilled out 843,000 gallons. So there's legitimate concern from the history of this organization, and that ought to be the focus of the June 4th hearing by the Army Corps of Engineers in Ashland, Wisconsin. That's running from 11 until 3 and then 4 until 8 p.m. on June 4th at the Northwood Technical College. And it's very important that people show up and really, we need hydrologists and scientists and former DNR agents who have the mechanical, technical information in front of them to tell the Army Corps of Engineers and other agencies that they need to do their job better. They need to do it better in Minnesota, because on Line 3, they're still working on mediating aquifer breaches, and they pumped all kinds of drilling fluids into the rivers and into the crevices underneath the rivers, and they're still mitigating what happened in Minnesota. And some of those engineering errors should have never taken place. It's because companies in a hurry to do their thing or trying to cut corners or whatever it is, but they ought not bring that to northern Wisconsin, in and around the Copper Falls State Park area. I'm hoping that when people get to the testimony, that they really ask that the agencies and permits, and already the Army Corps of Engineers is holding this hearing despite the fact that there's two major components of the environmental impact statement that have been provided for on water and maybe wetlands or something like that. But the question is, why is there this rush to get the permitting process going before drafts are done on some of these particular areas. And if you know the history of how these permits and drafts get put together, the DNR asks a question and they'll get a 20-page paper from Enbridge that they insert into the question, and that becomes the answer. And it doesn't mean that the DNR or Army or other people have tested some of these things. What they're relying on is the fact that Enbridge says they're going to do this. And if you look at, again, the history of this particular company, you'll find all kinds of infractions on Line 3 and other projects in the United States that really bear out the idea that there needs to be much more scrutiny on this line, or it ought not be permitted. Like, again, I said, 41 miles around the Bad River Reservation takes it out of the watershed and across, a dozen rivers, while at the same time putting it in contact with something like 22 different river sources. So it actually expands the cone of danger.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about Line 3 and the frack outs out and the water that you could drink up in where the Mississippi starts. Doug, that was disgusting what was happening here in Minnesota. Talk a little bit about what this foreign company's doing or wants to do up in Wisconsin.
Well, as Paul mentioned, they're trying to put 41 miles of pipeline around the Bad River Reservation, and that pipeline will cross virtually every tributary to the Bad River, as well as another river that runs into Lake Superior. So, it's and the hydrology up there is wet. There's some hills, and so there will be it'll be a difficult task, and it'll be virtually impossible to do without some sort of failures. And I want to touch base again on the cross-border organizing group and our attempts to pester, if you will, the Canadian government into dropping their unequivocal support of Enbridge. As I mentioned earlier, they have used a 1977 treaty twice to keep the water flowing. And we, as an organization, Line 5 Coalition and the Cross-Border Organizing Group, have filed several petitions with the Canadian government, and we are currently working on some initiatives to bring attention to the Line 5 as well as Line 9 to Canadian consulates in Detroit, which occurred on the 14th of May. And we have a meeting here in Minneapolis on the 14th of June at the Canadian consulate with their consulate of foreign policy to talk about Line 5, and to bring to their attention the number of times that we have contacted the Canadian government to drop their support, their unequivocal support of Enbridge. And, that's what we're into and trying to focus on.
Well, we got a few seconds left here. Paul, I'd really like to talk about how we can support you guys in the next segment, and also talk more about what's happening here in the Twin Cities on the 14th, and maybe get you guys on again before that.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I'm just impressed with Doug's work and the extension of the coalition up into Canada and across from the Majuin community at Sarnia all the way up to the Chippewa Cree territory where these tar sands are, all along the route at Kalamazoo amongst the Ojibwe Odawa, who now have less resources. There's still a lot to talk about in regards to the impacts that this line has already had on Indigenous communities. And Doug's right, that 1977 treaty ought not stand up against a dozen treaties that the Ojibwe Nation made with the U.S. and Canadian governments.
Right on. We'll be right back and talk more about that, Paul. Thanks. This is Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States.
And 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected.
Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl. Howl! J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Does your partner call you names or belittle you in front of friends and family? Emotional abuse is sometimes hard to recognize. If you're struggling in your relationship, Strong Hearts Native Helpline is culturally appropriate support and advocacy for Native American and Alaska Natives affected by domestic and sexual violence. Call or text 1-844-762-8483. That's 1-844-7-NATIVE. Or chat online at www.strongheartshelpline.org. Safe, anonymous, confidential, 24/7.
Step into the vibrant world of Alternative by Frank Buffalo Hyde at All My Relations Arts. Explore Hyde's sardonic pop culture saturated works on commodification of Indigenous culture and Native American identity. Don't miss Hyde's Artist Talk on May 31st. Hear from the artist himself where he says, "What you see is what you get when it comes to me and my art. I pull no punches." The talk with artist Frank Buffalo Hyde is Friday, May 31st from 5 to 7 p.m. at All My Relations Arts in Minneapolis.
All of us want to make a difference. As veterans, we committed to protect our country. We served and sacrificed for the things that mattered most. Those experiences shaped our lives. Now we're husbands, wives, parents, and friends. And sometimes we forget that the biggest challenge can be asking for support. The Veterans Crisis Line is here for veterans. Dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. It matters.
Hi, I'm Mary T, inviting you to experience our integrative Mary T Health and Wellness Center, offering physical, occupational, speech, and lymphedema therapies. Experience our guided imagery, meditation, Tibetan medicine, dry needling, massage services, including cupping and oncology massage. Sign up for our free wellness screenings and learn more at marytwellness.com. All major health insurance providers are accepted. Come for therapy, experience wellness.
AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Rudy Luther Toyota buys cars. How do I know? I did it myself with my old original Toyota Sienna. You can get cash for your used vehicle. Here's how it works. Go to RudyLutherToyota.com, click on the Luther Buys Cars tab, enter some basic information, and you'll get a good offer from Rudy Luther Toyota real fast. Then set up an appointment to bring in your vehicle, which usually takes about 20 minutes or less, and you'll get paid. It's really simple. They gave us a great offer for our used vehicle. Go to RudyLutherToyota.com for more information. Rudy Luther Toyota at 169 and 394 in Golden Valley.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Showers and thunderstorms tonight with a low of 61, then more showers and thunderstorms on Friday with a high of 73. Celebrate these great summer nights with a spectacular meal from an Eat Local Minnesota restaurant or food purveyor. They're perfect for any occasion. See the list of Eat Local Minnesota restaurants and food purveyors at eatlocalminnesota.com.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio. This is Spirit from Reservation Dogs. Get up and listen.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, we are here with Paul DeMain and Doug Heuer, and he's a water advocate, retired from IT and airline industry, speaking briefly on Line Coalition and cross-border organizing, working again with Paul DeMain, Communities United by Water organizer. Welcome, you guys. Really interesting and really great to hear these updates, Paul. I kind of cut you off, Paul, at the end there. I'd like you to finish your thoughts on how great these organizers are doing and what they're doing for our communities, Native and white out there.
Right. Well, I think what I can recommend is if people are interested in getting more information, one of the websites that I work with is communitiesunitedbywater.org, communitiesunitedbywater.org. And then they have events listed there and from Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission and the Bad River Tribe and other tribes, the resolution from 27 tribes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota who wrote to the U.S. government opposed to the reroute and the extension of this line operating into the future. It's very easy to Google Line 5 and get information from everybody that's there. The other key word is Bad River. There was a recent 1.5 hour film that was produced that's very, very good, and it describes the Bad River's fight against environmental issues and a fight to preserve their homelands and its pure clean water state that it has been over the life since 1854. And so, the main thing is right now is to make sure that if those people who have something to say, make them aware of the comment period. It goes 31 days after the hearing on June 4th. And you can find that U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Line 5 permitting process. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of websites, and people just need to make their voices heard in casual ways. We're not asking for people to get radical, just to think about how good it is to drink a clean glass of water and whether or not that would be in jeopardy and whether it's worth losing, for example, the wild rice that the Bad River people, thousands of pounds of rice that they use for their economy and for their food basis there in the region, to lose all that for a foreign corporation. People have changed their mind. Enbridge at one point wanted to take all this oil and ship it out of Duluth and put it on tankers and move it through the Great Lakes, and the public objected to it. And so at this particular point, there are alternatives that Enbridge and these companies can do, including everyone turning their thermostat down a little bit, getting better cars, doing all the things, and forget trying to be convinced that by Enbridge that you're dependent on plastic straws. People wouldn't know how to drink out of a glass if they didn't have a plastic straw made from oil products. They wouldn't know how to clean off the ice off of their windshield during the winter if they didn't have a plastic ice scraper and all the other trinkets that come out of foreign countries where this oil ends up and being produced into plastic products that are, again, causing a huge issue in the environment and the oceans and the collection of plastic beads and everything else that's going on. We really need to rethink what we're doing to our bodies and our resources. So thank you for having me on today. But the hearing again, Tuesday, June 4th, Ashland, Wisconsin. The website, communitiesunitedbywater.org, is just one of many. SierraClub350.org. You can find information on the pipeline there. So pass it to Doug for a minute.
Yeah. Hey, it's great, Paul, too, with your media background that you're handing it over to Doug. Good one. Oh, wow.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Paul. And I can highly recommend the Bad River movie. It is an excellent documentary. And I want to just emphasize the action that we have planned here in Minneapolis on the 14th of June. It's at the Canadian Consulate in downtown Minneapolis. We have speakers from northern Wisconsin. We've got Dawn Goodwin from the White Earth Reservation to be speakers, and we will be delivering. We have an appointment at 11:30 with the Consulate of Foreign Policy, and we will be delivering several documents at that time, as well as simultaneously having speakers out on the plaza in front of the building that houses the consulate. Now, this is the same kind of activity that happened in Detroit. It's happening in what's called riders in Ontario, which are, they're the kind of the equivalent, I think, of a county, as well as we will be doing a very similar action at the consulate in Chicago sometime in July. So again, the announcement for this will be posted on Communities United by Water within a couple of days. So, thank you very much for having me on to speak about what we're trying to do with our partners in Canada to stop the Canadian government from exerting its influence here in the United States.
Yeah, Paul, that's just crazy. I appreciate you guys being on, and I'd love to have you on more often with updates. Paul, speak on what we can do as listeners, how we can support you and support what's going on. I know you've talking about a little bit. Let's get maybe a little specific for our listeners that are doers out there.
Robert, there's a simple formula to what people can do. And what it is whatever they do best. If they sing songs for the earth. If you cook for the water protectors, go to a potluck feast and share it with people. If you're a writer, write letters to the editor. If you're into politics, contact your politicians. If you're a radio icon of some kind, do lots of radio, but it really is doing what you do best in a way and contributing in a coalition way. That's what I like about the coalition is we don't have a hierarchy of leaders and assistants and everything down. It's people from Canada through the Great Lakes area pretty much doing whatever they can to reach out to their clergy, to the educators, to talk to their children, to get people involved. And we're up against a grassroots operation of people in the United States who are up against a foreign corporation who feels that they can buy us and think they have by spending all the money in the world. There's money all over the place that Enbridge is showering the world with now. And in some places, they call it regulatory capture, where there's so much money put into suit coats and ties and lobbyists and lawyers. For example, when Bad River filed lawsuit against Enbridge, and Enbridge has been found to be trespassing on the reservation for 11 years now and owes Bad River a payment. Well, Enbridge filed lawsuit against Bad River. Enbridge filed lawsuit against the state of Michigan. Enbridge will harass you. They will have people follow you around. We found that there are very uncanny foreign corporation who will do what they need to do to intimidate people and to buy what they want from the community. And so Mike Wiggins told me one time, he says, we were all sitting at the table and working, talking about clean water, talking about food resources that are protected by treaty rights. And somebody from the foreign corporation in Canada walks in with a suitcase of money and change the entire dialogue. And so the people that want the money are there. They'll all show up at the front row at the hearing. They'll all have color-coordinated shirts on. They'll have big fancy trucks, but bought and paid for by a foreign corporation. So do your Google search and talk to people and share and be yourself and be good to each other, because my cousins sometimes need a job, and some of them work for Enbridge because they need that, but they also need to be advocates for clean water wherever they might be.
Paul and Doug, as you probably know, Native Roots Radio was started because of Standing Rock, and at the same time, and what's old is new, and it's just I'm really glad that you guys are on, Doug, and talking about this, because we haven't talked about it in a while, and we get caught up in everyday things, but this is something that we can do something about as citizens.
Well, exactly. As Paul said, advocate. Do what you do best and advocate. And, there's grassroots organizations that get large and have a common focus are extremely powerful. And, it's time to influence some politicians. And that's what we intend to do.
That's huge. That's huge. Paul, what can we expect coming up here? I know we got the 14th and we got the 4th, and we need people out there to get educated and get fired up. And it's great to have you two on. Wow. Tell us more.
Yeah. I'm just going to say that there's a lot of events coming up by a lot of organizations. There's people organizing in Madison and the Twin Cities and Detroit and Canada. There should be plenty of opportunities coming up, especially now that we're in the permitting process of negotiation. There may be some decisions made on some of those permits, but we're expecting that people are going to organize and resist any pipeline work in the Chequamegon Bay area, just like they did at Standing Rock and just like they did in northern Minnesota. And so be ready for that, but be ready to be a grandma in a Prius who He's in the middle of the road and offers to be arrested in northern Minnesota. It was just unbelievable, the number of people that came up and supported that. Several thousand people were arrested to make a public statement. But I'd rather work all the regulatory authorities that we can and try to make them do their job and see whether the test of the potential spills can take place. I don't think it can take place. As Doug had said, the geology of that area is special. The watershed of that area is special. The Copper Falls State Park is a special area. The EPA has already said there's no way to get in there and remediate the site if there was to be an oil leak down in that area. And so I just think that I hope that it doesn't happen. Well, get out there and talk to people.
Well, right on, Doug. Thank you so much. And Paul, thank you so much for being on. We got to do this again and more often.
Thank
you. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Right on. Hey, this is Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and up next, Bob Blake from Red Lake, Solar Bear with the Solar News. Ho-wah.
If you're in a safe space and want to talk about domestic or sexual violence, Strong Hearts Native Helpline is a culturally appropriate helpline for Native American and Alaska Natives. Strong Hearts advocates are available 24/7 and can provide personalized safety planning, crisis intervention, and help locate Native-centered resources and service providers. For more information, call or text 1-844-762-8483. That's 1-844-7-NATIVE. Or chat online at www.strongheartshelpline.org. Free, safe, anonymous, confidential. Strong Hearts Native Helpline.
Attention, Native American community. As we prepare for American Indian Celebration Month in Minnesota this May, it's essential to prioritize the health and safety of our communities. With social gatherings and festivities on the horizon, getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is crucial. So let's make getting vaccinated a tradition, inclusive, and cross-generational. Imagine gatherings filled with shared stories and cultural celebrations, free from the shadow of COVID-19. Remember, protecting yourself and others is what counts. Whether it's time for an updated vaccine or your first shot, all COVID-19 vaccines offer protection, with the latest vaccine especially recommended for our elders over 65. As we gather with friends and relatives this May for American Indian Celebration Month, let's ensure everyone's safety by getting vaccinated. Together, we can uphold our traditions and keep our communities thriving. For more information, including details about clinics offering free vaccines, visit vaccines.gov. This message is brought to you in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Health. The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis AIR. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950.
Anine, I'm Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and you are listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
Wendy was howling in the background. Hey, wow, what a great show. We have to really, Haley, get back to our roots here at Native Roots Radio, because this show was started fighting pipelines, so it was really good to hear those two talk about what's happening and get us fired up again.
Yeah, and yeah, when we talk about pipelines, it just always seems like, like an ongoing battle. And I think, what's that saying? It's not the battle, but it's a war or something like that. But yeah, it's just unfortunate too that, yeah, I would recommend the Bad River documentary to anyone looking for more information about the area. And we've had the Sierra Club people on before. I believe we were talking about the Kohler Andre State Park and the golf course that was trying to go in there. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an ongoing thing.
Definitely. So a lot of good things to do. I know we always talk about what action can our listeners do. Sometimes we feel helpless with what's going on, but really some good elementary actions that people can do, whether it's straws, ice scrapers, or getting a Prius, or
Yeah.
not a Tesla. I just want to bring that up.
Well, it's like what Bob Blake talks about too. Hopefully he can join us here shortly. But I feel like Bob always says, if we're looking for jobs or people are looking for a job that's going to hire them quickly and keep them in work. Yeah, I mean, Enbridge always has these jobs, but so do, renewable energy jobs. And I feel
Well,
like Bob gives those out quite a bit.
absolutely. And I want to get into something here because I was having a little recall, and not in a good way, when we were talking about that. When they were up in Minnesota, there was people from all over the country that were coming in, and these were the union jobs that were promised to the people up north. We People up north that lived in that community got low paying jobs carrying stop signs, holding the signs for $20 an hour, no health care. And so there was a lot of blarney going up and a lot of promises that didn't come true with jobs. So I really get irritated when I hear that there's work. Yeah, there's work for people that don't live in the state because they're pipe fitters from all over the country. And
Mm-hmm.
we all know too, like we like to always used to say, one thing we know about pipelines is they leak.
Yeah.
That's it. That's one thing we can count on for sure.
Yeah. Well, and if pipelines are your thing and you like installing pipe, I mean, there's fire sprinkler unions that, fire sprinklers save lives, and
Yeah.
that's putting in pipes and
Well,
dealing with water. So there you
well,
go.
and I like what Paul said too. It's like, hey, if you're a pipe fitter, we need some clean water, and Michigan's still suffering
Mm-hmm.
from dirty water. And hey, here's our friend. You didn't howl with us, but maybe we should howl again for the Timberwolves tonight, Bob.
Oh,
Ow.
hey, Robert. Speaking of pipelines, there is a developer, a housing developer in North Dakota that says that the carbon pipelines that they're talking about building are going to sink property values and cost local governments hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. So I think that this is another thing that these pipelines really these developers need to think about when they're developing these projects, right? Because I'm telling you right now, a lot of these counties, Robert, are not going to want these pipelines because of the inevitable sinking of property values, the lost revenue, and that's not going to sit well for the folks that are there living. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so I think that those are some things that need to be considered now more than ever with folks, that don't appreciate these pipelines being crisscrossed all over their property in their communities.
Well, Bob, you remember why we started the show years ago is because of the Standing Rock and all the misinformation. And we would have probably never had the show. You and I would not be hanging out as much because they originally wanted that pipeline to go through Bismarck, and they said, oh no, pipelines leak. Put it through the BIPOC area, or put it through the Indian reservation.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And that was another form, that was just another, continuous environmental racism that happens with these projects, right? That frontline communities are constantly subjugated to, and so that to me right there, Robert, was like when I like heard you, and I was like, who's this guy, Robert Pilot? I was thinking, I was like, why do I know his name? And then my brother was like, oh, that's Bob Pilot from Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
And we used to hang out with him. And I was like, what? And then my brother goes, yeah, you remember him? He was around all the time. And I was like, wow. And then it was so funny how we got connected. And then we started doing the program. But, this has come so far since then. But it really, Robert, your activism and, you speaking out and just saying that this isn't right has led to so many other voices now in Native country being heard and being recognized, nationally now. And, in my instance, all over the place now. I have no idea. And this all just started with the show, honestly.
Well, and then we go all around the country and people listen to us, which is always, hard to believe when you're talking into a microphone and it's going out to the cosmos. You don't know who's listening, but you run into people all over the country that know who you are and know who I am and Haley and Wendy.
Yeah, that's incredible. And obviously, I'm sure you guys talked about the big news of today.
Yeah, we could talk more.
But I mean, with that being said, I mean, I that to me isn't, I'm so happy, by the way. But the other point I think I wanted to say is that so many good things are happening, and honestly, folks, that are happening with this administration, that funding is coming from the government into communities that never has seen this type of investment in their entire existence, and so I mean, just I want everybody to understand what this administration is doing, because they are doing so much good for so many folks around this country. It's that old saying, Robert, from Senator Wellstone: when we all do good, we all do good, right? It's something to that, yeah. And I mean, that's why I say today's decision, made by this court in New York is monumental in so many ways, and should have a profound effect on this year's election. Because I don't know how anyone in good conscience could, cast a vote for, an individual that is a convicted felon now. Whether or not he serves time or not is irregardless. He is a convicted felon, and that's the point. You know what I mean?
Well, and then to go along with his 2 impeachments.
Yeah, absolutely, Robert. And so I mean, I just don't know how anyone can even justify casting a vote for this individual now. And I hope now that that we do get a second Biden administration, because then that means that all the work that we have been doing and continuing can only get bigger and better, especially for these communities that have been so poorly invested in the past.
Right on, Bob. We got to have you on again. The solar bear with the solar news. Yep, that's cheer tonight. Woo!
Go Wolves!
Go Wolves!
Go Timberwolves! And save the wolves. Sykes Bob Blake. Hey, if you're listening to the show, you're part of the resistance. From Chief Plenty Coops, the ground in which we stand on. It's sacred ground. It's the blood of our ancestors. We need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office, and vote. We're still here. We are the 7th generation.